just so everyone's in the know of the topics that we discussed. But we were talking about the concept called moach shalit al halev, which means how to use your mind to control your emotions. Mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. And we discussed a few ideas. And the first thing is we discussed the idea yesterday, so it's a quick recap, of unwanted feelings or emotions. Now, just to recap a little bit more, we discussed that there are garments of the soul. 3 garments. Machshava, dibur, maisa. Thought, speech, and our behaviors or actions. Now, the thing is that there are elements, right? We discussed yesterday the idea of identifying elements of unwanted feelings. There's the emotion itself. There's the understanding, the mind that gave birth to the emotion. And then we discussed there's the garment that facilitated this process, which is our thought. You can't change your brain. You have a brain. If you to take that brain out, you would be kaput, right? So we're not changing the brain, but we're trying to change the garments of the soul, the way the brain thinks, the thought process. Take away the negative thoughts and put in positive ones. Okay, now this is not an easy process, as we discussed, and combating our intellect or even our feelings, our emotions, is hard. Okay, it's easy. It's easier to change the apps on your phone, and the apps we said is somewhat of that idea. The hardware is your brain and your heart. The software are the apps, and at the same time, the idea then is that the software are our feelings, our thoughts. What am I thinking and feeling about? But if I could try every single day, somewhere or another, to overcome, to combat negative thoughts, and to try instead to put in positive thoughts, because realizing my thoughts are not me. You aren't your thoughts. So just because I have a negative thought, sometimes that thought's going to linger and it might get to my emotion and my feelings. I'm going to act on it. Sometimes you're going to break your diet and eat something that you know you shouldn't, and it's not going to be good for you, for your health. And other times you'll be stronger and you'll overcome it. We want to get into the habit of constantly overcoming it. And I shared with you what it says in Tanya yesterday in chapter 12, which basically that the idea that as human beings we can control our thoughts. That's very much the idea that's advocated in Tanya. I told you the story of Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mezrich, who sent his student who was asking, how can I control my thoughts? And he sent him to the home of Reb Zev, and he's knocking on Reb Zev's door, and he says, please let me in. And he's ignored by Reb Zev. Reb Zev is not letting anybody in. And eventually, when he does let him in, Reb Zev, he says to Reb Zev, he asks Reb Zev, what's going on? Why didn't you let me in? He says, I gave you the answer to your question. You let in who you want, right? You have constant thoughts, a barrage of thoughts constantly in your head. You are going to determine which thoughts can enter and which ones do not. Now, how does this help with feelings? Because now we tackled thoughts. What are we going to do about feelings? Now, yesterday, who was here yesterday to ask? Oh, I was actually virtually. It was Mervin who asked, what do we do during prayer? We all of a sudden get these distracting thoughts and feelings. Our mind wanders off to other places, right? And we said there are sometimes these unconscious thoughts that are beyond your control. I took a minute break yesterday. I was just drinking something. I asked everybody what they were thinking about. One person said their bills. Another person said their breakfast. So Bracha said she was thinking about my water that I was drinking. Why were you thinking about those things? What about the class? Because our mind wanders, okay? And what we have to try to do, the idea of meditation, is how to think deliberately. How to be focused. What specifically I'm going to think about. So when we realize that our machshava, dibur, ma'aser, our thought, speech, and actions are the garments of the soul, then we can hopefully get into switching from negative thought into positive thought. And that's why I say, if I go 7 days without Torah study makes 1 week. And therefore, we need to have that aspect, that element of inculcating, and that's why I'm glad you're all here, whether in person or virtually. Inculcating is to put into yourself, to, how would you say it in Hebrew? I don't know. Making it part of your practice, okay? Making it something that you do with yourself every day. As I read to you the letter that Tzemach Tzedek to his Mechutin, the Tzemach Tzedek, I'm trying to remember his son-in-law's, no, his daughter-in-law's father, right? There's a chassid by the name of Reb Shlomo Freidis. I think Reb Shlomo Freidis' daughter married the son of the Tzemach Tzedek. And I read you that letter of the Tzemach Tzedek. I have it here if you want to go through it again, but that's where we left off, actually. That was the conclusion. And in that letter, he wrote a very practical technique, which is where I want to leave off, where I want to continue. That's what we discussed yesterday. And he basically said, remove that thought, right? Take your shirt's dirty. Take that shirt off. You have fears, you have worries, you have problems. This person was writing, this fellow, Reb Shlomo, was writing to the Tzemach Tzedek about his personal fears, his personal issues, because he was getting older, and he had certain health concerns, and the Tzemach Tzedek said to him, I know you don't have these health concerns, you're becoming a hypochondriac. Basically, you would say that in modern terms. Sometimes we start getting worried about things. He said, instead, remove the negative thoughts, and the fear will disappear. How do you remove the negative thoughts? Well, we have to try to, as I said, put in positive thoughts. If we can have that mastery of moach shalit al halev, that my mind can control my emotions, my feelings, that it's in control. I know there are subconscious feelings that are going to show up. I'm all of a sudden going to have worries and fears about all types of things. Then guess what? At those moments, I will acknowledge the fear. Where is the fear coming from? Why am I afraid? What am I worried about? Try to deal with it. The Gemara says, and there's a famous song from Mordechai ben David, it said, he took the Talmudic words and made them very famous. Ha'avar ayin ve'ha'atid adayin ve'ahove keheref ayin da'ago minayin. The Gemara asks the question, da'aga minayin, where does worry come from? What you worried about? Ha'avar ayin, the past is gone. Yesterday is history. V'ha'atid, the future, adayin. Yeah, tomorrow's a mystery. V'ahove keheref ayin, and this moment flies by like the blink of an eye. The expression my mother told me was, but today is a gift of God, and that's why it's called the present. Either way, we have to see it that way, that we have to try to focus our attention on the positive. And it's not to bury your head in the sand. Okay, I'm not saying you have to bury your head in the sand, but worry, it could be detrimental. And that's why we mentioned, it says in the Torah, that when there's soldiers going out to war, speaking of which, I'm seeing pictures of Ukrainian Jewish soldiers who are putting on their tefillin and are doing, who are out there. They're doing what they have to do to defending their country. The irony is right now you probably have Jewish Ukrainian soldiers and Jewish Russian soldiers. For us Jews, this is one big mess. This is not a good thing. Look at Israel's position, very tough position. Israel has good relations with both countries. You don't want to ruin the relations. At the same time, what do they say? History repeats itself, right? So the only thing we see in history is that history repeats itself, and we keep seeing it. And if people remain quiet, what happens? You sit on the sidelines, you ignore what's going on, and boy, is that more trouble. So I don't envy the Prime Minister of Israel's position at this moment. How do you deal with this? We have Jews on both sides. But going back to that example of the military, the Torah says that the Kohen, there would be a Kohen, a priest, who would speak and give that war cry, the encouragement, the support to the soldiers. And he would tell them not to worry. And if a soldier did worry, he had to be discharged because that was a problem. So worry is a real thing. We have to try to deal with worry. But if you can't eliminate that worry, if the panic sets in, it could be contagious and it could ruin it for everyone else. And the same thing with ourselves. That's why it's so important to try to address, what are you worried about? If it's something in the past that you can't change, you can't unspill spilled milk. The milk is spilled already. What are you going to do? So sometimes you have to actually deal with the issue. That's why it's important that people go to a therapist when they have personal matters that have to be dealt with. Go to the therapist, talk to them, deal with it. You have somebody who could, right, even that itself, the idea of having a sounding board, somebody you could discuss matters with, somebody who could hear you and you could hear yourself. Sometimes it's just for yourself, the benefit of you hearing yourself, what your worries and concerns are, so that you're able to handle it and deal with it in the right way. Okay, so that's where anything else that we said yesterday? I'm trying to recall if there was any other matters, but the point is, unlike our mental and emotional capacities, which are difficult to change, because you're wired with a brain and a heart, but we all have the ability within ourselves to exercise control over our thoughts. So I can't change the way my brain, my brain is there. I'm wired that way, right? Some people are naturally panickers and worriers, but I could deal with the thoughts themselves. And therefore, if a thought comes my way that's no good, how could I deal with it? What could I do to address that thought and try to eliminate the negative thought? And if we do that, we change our thoughts from being products of the mind or our feelings just a product of the heart, and we control them, we direct the focus. It's what I want to think about. That's sort of the idea of what Viktor Frankl said, that you can't control your circumstances, but you can control the way you react to them. Again, I'm only paraphrasing Winston Churchill's words because I'm sure he said it in a more profound way than I'm telling it to you here. Okay. Now, it's important to clarify that in practice, controlling your thoughts does not mean battling unwanted thoughts or actively attempting not to think them. Right? Don't think about a pink elephant. No, I said don't think about a pink elephant. Right? So that doesn't work. I can't imagine it really working because Ronnie likes showing me a lot of King Solomon's. I see you studying a lot of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, and Mishlei, Proverbs. So here's a famous line from Mishlei. Shlomo HaMelech says, Da'aga b'lev ish, if you're having worries in your mind, then what does he say? Yashichena. What does Yashichena mean? Okay. That you should cast them away. You should eliminate them. By the way, when I said before that if you have bad thoughts, you're having worries, there's another way of using that very same word. Yashichena can be pronounced also as Yasichena. Don't forget in Hebrew, especially in the original text where there's no vowels, the word Yashichena means to cast them away, to push away your negative thoughts. Yasichena, same word. Remember in Hebrew, a shin and a sin is the same letter, but a shin has the dot on the right because she is always right, and a sin is on the left because it's no sin to be a lefty. Good way to remember it, okay? I'm into mnemonics. That's a good way to remember these things. If you catch on to my little thoughts, you'll remember them just like I remember them, and they're very helpful. So, King Solomon in Mishlei is saying, Daga b'lev ish, yashichena. If you're having negative thoughts, what should you do? You should try to push them away, cast them out of your mind. Have you ever tried to do that? Does it work? What's that? Does it work for you? I don't recall which chapter of Tanya. Today we're holding in chapter 32. If you're following the daily cycle of Tanya study. But again, I'm going to quote a lot of Tanya to you because that's a fundamental work of the Chabad philosophy. And after all, you're with us here at Chabad House, right? In Tanya, the Alter Rebbe tells us these words. In fact, if you're having distracting thoughts during davening, which was Mervin's question, you know what he says? Docheu b'shtei yadayim. You should fight it with both your hands. It means you're struggling. You have negative thoughts. Now, of course, he's speaking figuratively, right? Because I don't know how you're going to take thoughts and fight them with your hands and push them away. Right? He's obviously using euphemistic language. Okay? Now, fighting with one hand would mean what? If I tell you fight with one hand. That means you're struggling with it. To fight with both hands means to completely focus away from that thought entirely. It means literally fighting it. No? What's both hands? It's like a very strong language that he's using to describe how we're meant to fight off negative, distracting thoughts. Okay, he's talking specifically there about during prayer, which was exactly what Mervin was asking. But I imagine you could apply this to any aspect of life where negativity sets in. When a negative thought pops into your mind, attempting to reason it away in the moment, I don't know if that works. It's in fact, I think it deepens the pathway of that particular thought in your brain. I told you not to think about a pink elephant, didn't I? Why are you thinking about the pink elephant? I told you not to. It solidifies its place in your mind now. because you're thinking not to think about that particular thing. Right? It's something like struggling against quicksand, which, of course, what happens when you struggle with quicksand? You dig deeper and deeper inside, right? So that could be quite a problem. And that's what we want to avoid, is getting stuck in the quagmire. So when something happens to trigger you into going down a spiral of negative thoughts, isolate that voice in your head. Picture it as talking to you through the telephone. Right? Try to find another way that it's a little bit more distance. Okay? Now imagine if someone was riling you up. Yeah, whatever happens, somebody's verbally abusive to you, cursing you out, saying nasty things to make you upset. Now they're on the other line of the phone. How are you going to react? What are you going to do? You have two options. You can get all heated up, right? You could start getting even more mad at them, right? But instead of figuring out a way to answer them back and getting caught up in the heat of this emotion, and you'll be just dragged down in this emotional, abusive nonsense, you have another option. What's the simplest, easiest option you have? Click, end the call, end the conversation, done. And that's what I want to say. The same thing is true with your thoughts. Just hang up on your thought pattern, cut it off. Of course, you're going to tell me easier said than done. But I'm giving you an analogy. Perhaps that's something you could try. Trying not to think the thought doesn't work. Not for me. It just, gets worse. It just deepens the thoughts. My father was Russian, and he quoted a Russian saying once, something like, what did he say? It was something similar, like not to think about the polar bear. I don't remember exactly. It was a Russian expression. Huh? What happens every minute? He's still thinking about the same polar bear. It's because he told you not to think about it. Yeah, please go ahead, Ronnie.
It's from personal experience that I'm having.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like particularly the one if thoughts which they are flying when you playing and dabbling.
Yeah.
So if there are any negative thoughts, what I do, in my mind, I say, right, I'll deal with you later.
Okay.
I'll get back to you.
Overnight siege, the Ukrainian military said Russian airborne troops landed in the eastern city of Kharkiv. They attacked a local hospital early Wednesday.
It's true.
sparking
I mean,
immediate
personally, I
pressure.
think about how many thoughts come into my mind today. How many of them do we actually remember?
Tuesday,
But negative thoughts tend to linger. But I find,
find,
and I think studies show this exactly, that the idea of suppressing the thoughts has this paradoxical effect that not only can't you actively suppress the thought, but the attempted suppression of that thought leads to your increased thinking about that particular thing. That's what happens, right? So you're trying not to think about the pink elephant, and what happens? Now the pink elephant is standing right on top of you, right? Breathing down your neck and getting bigger. Exactly. It's amplifying. It's growing.
Yes,
It's
you have
getting
to
bigger.
take medicine and
But you certainly don't want. So again,
medicine.
we haven't come up with a solution
Then after
completely
you-
yet. Right now we're saying, the thing is, hold on a second. I'm just working this through with you, my friends. On the one hand, and Tanya the Alter Rebbe says, "Dochel b'shtei yadayim," you should force it away with both your hands, which in my mind means and sounds like suppression of the thought. On the other hand, I'm understanding that if you suppress a thought, I don't know if that really works.
The streets are pretty much empty.
So,
people are taking
what do you want to
shelter
do?
most of the time.
Which way does it work?
The defenders of the city have developed a multi-layered defense system. With trenches, with
What's that? Replace it with something positive. Okay.
But we know that Russian column is inching closer all the time. Apparently, there was fighting.
Okay, there you go.
One of the
So,
districts of Kiev.
I want to ask you for a moment to just think about anything. Okay? Anything. But again, don't think about that pink elephant, please. And if you do think about the pink elephant, I'll tell you what you're going to do. I want you to clap. Okay? I want you to clap. Okay? And then go back to thinking about something else. Okay, let's do this for 1 minute. All of you watching on YouTube, Facebook, Zoom, do the same thing. Right now, for 1 minute, we're going to have a meditation exercise. Think about anything. If the pink elephant pops up, don't think about the pink elephant. If you do think about the pink elephant, I want you to clap.
The defenders would have the advantage of knowing
no pink elephant, right? What are you thinking about? Think about other things. If the pink elephant pops into your mind, clap.
The Russians would suffer immense casualties. And the more the city gets...
All right, you get the point? Yes? You see what I'm saying? Now, since you just can't stop thinking, right, your mind is constantly working. The Talmud says, "Machshava masheches tamid." The thought process, machshava mishochetet tamid. Mishochetetes. It's constantly thinking. So the way to rid yourself of a negative thought is what? You're not going to suppress it. That doesn't work. Instead, think about something else, something positive in this place. Right? Because the truth is, you can only have one thought going on in your mind at once.
Yes.
So when you switch your active thinking to something else, then the original thought process that was running in your head is discarded. It gets eliminated. And that, I think, is a very important point that you have to keep in mind, because your mind can only think about one thing at once. Oh, that reminds me, remember Moshe Dayan? Wasn't he prime minister? He was prime minister of Israel. He was once a very famous general. Moshe Dayan, very famous for his patch on his eye. So he was once driving along the highway in Israel, Kvish Mispar Echad, and he's going quite fast. And the police officer pulls him over on the side of the road and says, and looks at him and says, "Oh my goodness, you should know better, Mr. Dayan. You're speeding kamama shuga like a crazy lunatic on the highway. What are you doing? You got to be a role model for all the people in this country." So Prime Minister Dayan looks up at the cop. He says, "Adoni HaShoter, Mr. Police Officer. As you can tell, there's only one functioning eye, right? So where do you want me to look? At the road or the speedometer?" With that in mind, let me take you into another interesting thought taught in Hasidic philosophy. Okay? And it says as follows. This is the letters of the Tzemach Tzedek. Right. Iker Hesach Hadas, if you want to know the primary method of removing, remember I told you yesterday, Hesach Hadas. It says Mashiach will come behesach hadas. Not when you're thinking about it. You ever look at what's the expression? A stirred at kettle doesn't boil? Right? Things don't happen when you're just staring at it, but it happens with time. I got these braces here. The truth is I got them in order for my kids, because the kids really need some orthodontal work and they were really frightened and scared. So in order to eliminate their fear, I asked the dentist if I could get braces too. He said, "Yeah, you have a little bit of crowding there. We could give you braces. You don't really need them. Besides the point, you're already married, so you're not going to impress anybody, right?" Anyways, I did it for my kids' sake. But the truth is I went yesterday and it's really annoying right now, because now we put it on the top and the bottom. Last month was just the top, now it's the bottom as well. But the first few days, I'm like, nothing's moving, nothing's changing. What's going on? The dentist says, "Look, you had it there for a few weeks already. Look, there's already progress. It's grown and something has changed. If you keep steering, if I were to look in the mirror all day, nothing's going to work. It's not going to." So if you're going to the Hesach Hadas, now we're talking about, there's another idea of Hesach Hadas. Hesach Hadas is to remove those negative thoughts. How do you remove the negative thoughts? So it says the Tzemach Tzedek, Iker Hesach Hadas v'machshava, the way to remove those negative thoughts, the worrying thoughts of your mind is al yidei sheyishmar machshavtoi. That is by redirecting your mind lahalpisha bi'inyanim acherim. Just like we said, you could put on a different shirt if your shirt's dirty. Put on new thoughts. Okay? Put a new thought into your mind. Replace your previous thoughts Right? If you're feeling downtrodden, you're feeling morose, melancholy, what do you do? Think joyful thoughts. Remember the word machshava. What's machshava? Your thoughts has the same letters as the Hebrew word b'simcha. Same. Somebody said they can't hear me.
No, there's a terrible background noise. Someone has the radio on in Zoom.
Who's doing that? Guys, please, we're asking everyone to not put your radios on or whatever it is in the background. You see, this is the thing. This is exactly the idea. Can you be in two places at once? Okay, how many of you right now are elsewhere? Okay, if you are at the shiur and joining us virtually, don't forget we are live. We are on Facebook and YouTube. So whoever is, and we're not only on Zoom. So all you Zoom people, you are live. You are live. And therefore the noises you make in the background, you're showing you're not hearing and not there. Can you really be on your radio and hear at the same time? I don't know what you're achieving by doing that. I don't. I'm giving a little bit of musar now to the people on Zoom. Yeah. So what does he say? Replace the thought, the negativity, with positivity. And he says very specifically, Ubetaras Hashem. Remember, machshava, thought has the same words, b'simcha. Change it to simcha, to joy. Think thoughts of God's Torah, and that will delight your heart, because the Torah itself brings you joy. And that's why he says, I'm a samchim lev, which brings joy to the heart. Dvar yom b'yom, every single day. And therefore, what does the Tzemach Tzedek recommend? You know what you should do? You should do kviyas itim la Torah. Every single day, how do you best achieve having positive thoughts? By creating moments of Torah. Kviyas itim. Set aside a schedule. Have a schedule every single day when you're going to study Torah. And that, he says, is actually very effective. Not only that, don't study yourself. Because yourself, it's easy to get distracted. Yeah, you went on your computer to study, and somehow you get stuck in email or social media or who knows what. Study with somebody else. Have a study partner. Have somebody you're accountable to. Same thing probably works at the gym. Okay, don't look at me because I'm not exactly... I don't really go to gym. But I know that if I wanted to go to gym, if I wanted, or not gym, if I wanted to exercise, why don't I exercise? I don't have somebody to do it with. But maybe I don't have the strength or whatever, or the ability for it either. I haven't been doing that for 40 years. But the point I'm making is you could apply this to any area in life. You want accountability, have somebody to do it with. Find a partner. The Tzemach Tzedek is telling us here, you want to learn, and learning Torah will be the antidote to your negative thoughts, because learning Torah brings joy. Right? Then have a study partner. You'll be accountable to each other. Now you could apply this to every other aspect of life. That's why it's worthwhile to have a mentor in business and in health and in all other areas. When you have a mentor, you have somebody you're accountable to, you will find a way to connect with each other. So when you notice an unwanted thought creeping into your head, what is the key? Distract yourself. How? Not by suppressing it, because that doesn't work. Rather, exchange the thought for something more positive. And that will have a dual purpose. By investing yourself in a thought that calms you, the unwanted thought is discarded, and the negativity is that was there before. What happens to it? Hopefully it will dissipate. Because you can't be doing two things at once. You can't really think. As much as I always thought I'm a multitasker, I realize something's not happening. You're not really getting anything done. Multitasking, yes. Look, I agree there are certain things you can multitask with. While driving, maybe driving is the wrong one. Maybe while you're walking, okay? When I get phone calls, what I try to do here, it's annoying to some of the other rabbis in this building, but I like walking up and down because that's my opportunity to exercise as well. There are certain things where you're not using much of your mind. I feel like the mind can't be in two places at once. And therefore, when I have a meeting with somebody, I tell people, sometimes somebody who just walks into my office abruptly, wants to meet with me. Either I'm on the phone or I'm on the computer or I'm doing something. I can't give you that full attention if I'm distracted. Better to have an appointment with me And then I could give you my full, devoted, undivided attention. But if you're going to walk into me while I have to write my weekly column, or I have to send out emails, or I'm involved in doing something else, you know what's going to happen? To tell you the truth, yesterday I was squeezed for time and I had to write this week's column for the Jewish Report. So I wrote it, but the truth is I wrote it in a bunch of different, like here, there, everywhere. And I look at it now, I'm thinking, oy vey, I'm making an embarrassment. I hope it doesn't look too bad when it, you'll find out tonight when this week's Jewish Report comes out how bad it is. Because unfortunately, I didn't find the time to sit down, empty my mind of all other things. And that's what happens if you don't give your undivided attention to a task at hand. When I was doing my dissertation last year for my master's degree, my kids hated it, but I had to take certain times. That's when I stopped responding to Hatzalah calls regularly. I had to take certain time off where I'm not going to be distracted with anything else. Usually it was Saturday night. I had to basically stop doing calls, my shift, in order to be focused on the dissertation. Because otherwise, how else can you focus? And the point I'm trying to make is, when you fill your mind with a positive thought, and you focus on it, it creates the positive feedback loop. You're creating a positive state. And the positive thinking directs the mind to positive things. It activates positive emotions. It creates a positive posture. It creates a good attitude. It creates good feelings. And in order to do that, you really have to be focused. That's why my teacher used to say to me, Mr. Kivman, you sit down and focus on the Gemara. Okay, I want to. So, another important thing to remember is that although we're talking here about thought, right? And that's what we're spending the time this week. And I'm sorry, we're going to put this course pretty much on hold for the next few weeks. We're going to move into Purim next week and then into Pesach. But we discussed the three levushim, the garments of the soul. And just as thought can be the driver of emotions, so can speech and action. So you have to get yourself into the habit of perhaps not saying negative things. How often does it happen that people just spurt out words that are not appropriate? You know what? When you swear, you are creating negative atmosphere around you. It's unrefined language, and it creates toxicity in the environment. We have to be refined people. So your words or your behaviors, they're all a reflection of yourself. And then we wonder why my kids are talking that. To me, it's the most glaring self-conscious embarrassment and humiliation is when I do something inappropriate and I find my kids mimicking my exact behavior. Oy vey, it's a complete mirror back to me in my face. Right? So to cut off those unwanted feelings, we can redirect not only our thoughts, but also our speech and behavior to something that is positive. I know it's not so easy. Agreed. But get into the habit. Eliminate foul language from your lexicon. Try to constantly be in positive behavior. And a good way of doing this is the very beginning of Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. What it says on top of our ark and our shul. I don't think it says it on this ark here, but ours says, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. Always think I'm in the presence of God. If you're in the presence of royalty, whether it was the Queen of England or even the President of this country, when you are in the presence of royalty and leadership, you stand and you behave in a certain reverence. Try that out. Think you're always in God's presence. Your language should always be refined. Your behaviors should always be in the right way. And just to quote something here that the Tzemach Tzedek says in this letter, he says, one should not speak about disheartening topics, God forbid. But to the contrary, we should habituate ourselves to be in a joyful spirit. He writes here in Hebrew, so I'm just translating over into English. Be in a habit of speaking joyful and happy things. Even though it's not what your heart is feeling at the moment, in the end it will be exactly that. So again, this is a very powerful thought that we're mentioning here, and that's what today's screen that you see behind me is, or on your screen here, is that the thought of your mind, your machshava, that is what leads to your judgment, to your understanding, and certainly impacts your emotions. Let's just see if I could get that on here. Oh. Okay, so that's the first idea. If you could put in a Torah thought, the Torah thought will put you into a joyous mode, and that is the ideal that we want to achieve. Let me just see messages that have come through if anything's important. Okay. All right. Now, of course, as we said, it pays to have a positive or uplifting thought in your back pocket that you could pull out and meditate on whenever you need to. Now, it could be a fascinating science article that you maybe found once that somehow injects you with positivity. Maybe you have a happy memory. Whenever sometimes things aren't so good, try to think back to a happier moment. Maybe there's something to look forward to. Soon you'll be on your holiday, you'll be on the beach, you'll be kicking your legs up, you'll be where will you be? Oh, okay, where are we heading? We're heading to Mashiach. Okay, think about your children. Think about the people you love. Think of, I don't know, a serene, beautiful scene. Whatever works for you. Try to get into that positive mode. Think positive thoughts. That's the goal. That's the objective, that we want to get into a positive place. That's really what we're trying to achieve. Okay. Any questions before I look at what other ideas I wanted to share with you today? Certainly a lot. Okay, so I have a lot to tell you. And, I mean, just look right here. The idea that Tzemach Tzedek says, right? Have an idea of Torah that you can meditate on when you feel negative thoughts coming your way. Since Torah study brings you joy, it's more than just a welcome distraction. The Torah itself can leave you feeling elevated and purposeful. You'll feel like you have meaning in your life. And this is, if you want to talk about what is Jewish meditation, that's exactly it. We have a tradition. I will never forget with my father, as a child in the car, we had a free moment. He would pull out a Chumash, study some Chumash. Walking to shul, study a Mishnah. It's a long-standing Jewish tradition of memorizing passages of Tehillim or Mishnah or verses of Torah, to always have it at your disposal. We teach the kids to learn, and every day you study Torah. There are certain Torah study cycles that are done throughout the year, and I could tell you numerous cycles that we try to be part of. There is the daily chitas that the Chabad Rebbe's encourage that person should study every day the portion of Chumash and say the Tehillim of the day, and to study a section of Tanya each and every day. That certainly gives you plenty to keep you busy all day. There is the Mishnah Brura, the daily halacha study cycle. There's the Dirshu study cycle. Don't forget the Daf Yomi, the daily Talmud study cycle. There's so much to study, okay? And it's so easily accessible at your fingertips. It's so easy today, okay? Anytime you want, you can pull out your phone, pull out your device, and you can study Torah. It was never easier before in life. When we say in Shema every day to study the Torah, when you're on the road, maybe then you could understand when you sat in your home, you put on your lantern, you studied some Torah. Today, more than ever. I mean, in those days also, because the truth is, the Gemara says, how did they learn? In the old days, they would memorize their study 100 times. That's why if a person studied 101, it was like going out of their comfort zone, because they studied 101 times. But they would study things and had to occupy their minds. Today, when I study my daily Chumash, I go into Chabad.org, I have an app, you go into Spotify. There are so many available daily shiurim. There's no shortage of how much you could study every single day. There's absolutely no shortage of how much you could study on a daily basis, constantly, every single moment. You could tap into the study of Torah at your fingertip. So this routine investment of your mind into something that is joyous really has a very powerful effect of detracting from the negativity that we sometimes get caught up in. And at the end of the day, what do we think about? Whatever we experience, right? What do we talk about? What we read about? So if you're going to read Positive thoughts, that's what you're going to discuss. That's what's going to be on your mind. If you study and learn Torah, what's going to be in your mind? You're going to dream at night about the sweetness, the beautiful Torah study. It's going to inject you with positivity. So make it a habit to have something wholesome that you learn, that you study, that you read, that you talk about. And that way, there's a good chance that when your mind wanders into the negativity, no. Or if your mind wanders, it won't even get to negativity. It will always stay on the positive path. Because to begin with, that's what you're thinking about. So controlling your thoughts can actually relieve you of negative feelings by stripping away the platform from the negativity. And of course, how do you do this? By distracting your mind, not by suppressing the negativity, but rather filling it with something positive. And that, of course, not only deflates the negative feelings by not giving them attention, but also leads to positive emotions. Questions, ladies and gents? Okay. Now, my friends, positive meditation is more than just a psychological life hack. You know, these days everybody likes hacks for life. The mystics reveal that thinking positively actually shifts reality. Yesterday, Leo quoted a very famous expression from the Rebbe: "Tracht gut, wird sein gut." Think positively, and everything will be, and things will be good. It's not it's not just an expression that's going to take away all your problems, but our thoughts place us into a mental space that allows us to align with a specific flow of divine energy, and it channels that positivity into the world around us. Those who come to my shul know that every time we come to Baruch Shamar, or sometimes when we come to Baruch Shamar, what do I say to the gentleman? To pull out the two front fringes for this prayer and to remind ourselves, Baruch Shamar v'haya ha'olam. Blessed is the one who spoke and the world came to be. God didn't create this world with tractors and bulldozers. No cranes were involved. But it says God created the world with speech, the faculty of speech. God said there should be light, and there was light. Guess what? You also create your world, your environment, with the words you speak. Speak positively, you'll create a positive environment around you. Meditating on something positive directs a positive flow of energy, which obviously has a positive impact on reality. And this is such an important point that I can't stress enough. The potency of positive meditation is much more than just a psychological life hack, call it. Because Hasidic thought and philosophy, the Chabad approach, it teaches us something called radical. That our thoughts and mood actually determine, they actually shape how things play out around us. The words you say, like God created the world with words, the words you speak will create that environment. Don't hang around with negativity. If people you're hanging out with are pessimistic, you try to uplift them. But if they're dragging you down, find better companionship. Find other people to be with. Positive thinking doesn't just make us feel better inside. Tracht gut, wird sein gut. That expression, it creates real change in the world outside of us, in our environment. It's contagious. It has a ripple effect. So let me continue this letter that I was reading to you for the Tzemach Tzedek. And he says as follows. Adrabah l'daber v'lassos, he says, when you speak and act in a manner that projects positivity, then the positive emotions will be present with you. And he continues, he says, in this way, a spirit of joy and good-heartedness will descend upon you from above. You're drawing into your life, you're channeling positivity into yourself. And therefore, he says, quoting a teaching from I'm already forgetting whom. What does he say here? May Azmur Zal. Who's Azmur? My grandfather. Which grandfather? I guess from the Alter Rebbe. Yeah, because he was a grandson of the Alter Rebbe. He says here that it says in Yecheskel, in the prophet Ezekiel says, Kamare Adam alav milmala, like a person's appearance upon it from above. Basically, you create that mirror reflection in your life. If you put a frown in the mirror, you're going to get a frown right back. Put a smile, you'll get a smile back. Okay, so therefore he said, according to the feelings a person displays down here in this world, like a person's appearance, Kemare Adam, Olav Mimala, so is the nature of that which rests upon a person from above. In light of this teaching, said that the Alter Rebbe did not, and he says this very interesting here, did not permit me to sing a melancholy tune during the evening davening. I think I don't know if he's referring to Shabbos or what. You know, there's many tunes that you could apply to prayer, that he doesn't want a sad tune, because then it's going to make the prayer sad. After I completed the prayer, he explained his reasoning for objecting to my choice of melody, and shared this insight. He said, you don't want to create that sad, melancholy atmosphere. So that is what the Tzemach Tzedek was saying here in this letter that I continue reading to you. And I think it's quite incredible, this very insight, that our thoughts and our attitudes attract experiences in kind. It's not just what's in me, but it's also what I'm projecting, what I'm channeling into my life. By projecting positivity, we elicit positivity. And that translates into actual material, physical blessings for ourselves. The opposite is also true. Okay, I'm not going to go into that. That's why he said not to sing a melancholy song. The davening should be more uplifted. You might be familiar with another famous teaching excuse me, these braces are quite annoying, of the Tzemach Tzedek. He says, Da ma'ala ma'ala mimach. It's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Know that which is above you. So how did the Tzemach Tzedek, and how did the Maggid of Mezrich translate this verse, this passage, this Mishnah? He said, Da ma'ala ma'ala. Da kol ma shelemala. Hakol hu mimach. Know that everything happens in your life, milmala, all the energy you're bringing down from above. Mimach, it's from you. It's a mirror reflection of you. And the Baal Shem Tov very famously quoted a verse of Tehillim. Hashem tzilcha yad yaminecha. What does it mean, Hashem tzilcha? God is your shadow. See, now that's Tzemach Tzedek interpret. Not that I'm telling you, I got to go to the memory classes. By the way, all those I told you there's going to be memory class on Monday. It's been postponed now for another week. The memory classes will be following Monday because Cynthia is in isolation. She was on a plane and with her nephew, with somebody who tested positive for COVID. So though she's not tested positive, she is isolating and doesn't want to. You know, she herself was Bli Anhara turning 80 in a few weeks, in May. I think May 5th. So she herself has got to be careful, and she doesn't want to be exposing anyone here. So just so you know, no memory class on Monday. I will give a shir, but it will be, like I said, we'll be talking more Purim related, unless there's a few more points that I wanted to say here. But the point that Baal Shem Tov was making was same exact idea. God shadows. It's a shadow reflection of yourself. You create negativity, there's going to be the negativity will follow you. You create positivity, positivity will come around with you. Yeah? True. Okay, so now you're actually touching on another very important point, and that is that it's not to say that there's never a time for melancholy or what do you call it, solemn moments, right? Solemnness isn't always negative, and that's important for you to keep in mind. And perhaps the Alter Rebbe's directive to his grandson at that time was for that specific incident, and that's what I was quoting you in this letter that I just read to you. Okay, that was, at that particular moment that he said in that prayer, don't make the prayer negative, don't sing a melancholy tune, because that, this is what happens, why a chazan needs to know the meaning of the words. Right? If you're going to sing a joyous tune to, when I go to certain Hasidically challenged communities, the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, you know how they sing L'chadodi? L'chadodi, we sing Friday night, it's a joyous tune. But when it's Tisha B'Av, they sing a sad tune. L'chadodi, l'kras kalo, v'nei Shabbos, l'kabalo. And they say, what do they call it? Tisha B'Av. They say there's two problems the Hasidim and the Mesnagdim have. By the Mesnagdim, Purim feels like Tisha B'Av, and by the Hasidim, Tisha B'Av feels like Purim. Please God, but we should only have Purim, not Tisha B'Av. But the point we're making today is that we want positive thinking, that it does a lot more good for us, not just to feel good, but actually creates a good environment. And that's something we need to really inculcate in our lives. Okay, that you could call the law of attraction. Okay, it's not just a New Age theory. It has a real, there's a real science to it that Hasidus tells us. Okay, the law of attraction is a philosophy that's, I think, quite popular these days. Right? It's the idea that positive thoughts bring positive results in a person's life. That's what they call it, the law of attraction. And it's true that negative thoughts at the same time will create negative outcomes. But this is not just pseudoscience. Hasidus talks very much about this idea. And it's not just New Age theory. Because we discussed the different faculties that the soul uses to interact with the world around us. And these reflect the process that God uses actually, or that God used. And the reason I'm saying uses actually is because the blessing we say every morning, Baruch Atah Hashem Nosen HaTorah. God gives us the Torah. According to Hasidic philosophy, at every moment God is creating the world right now. If God were to stop creating the world would cease to exist. Unlike whoever made this beautiful Casio projector that's sitting right next to me here and projecting the screen, or the person who made this computer working for Steve Jobs did their job and they're done. That's not the case when it comes to the Almighty. The Almighty is constantly creating the world. Every single moment, it's called creation. Not ex nihilo. What's the term for it? Ex nihilo is something from nothing. There must be some other Latin term for it. But it's, I don't know what the right language for it is. But there is a term in Kabbalah, and the idea is that God is constantly creating the world. Okay? So God is creating the world every single moment. I think I was supposed to show you this earlier. Sorry, I forgot to show you. Like a person's feelings down here, so is the nature that rests upon him from above. It's a very powerful insight and thought that we could apply. And the idea is that every moment God is creating the world. And how does God create the world? By what means does God create the world? So Kabbalah teaches us that God is infinite and singular. And in order to create the world and direct a world of ex nihilo, something from nothing, God channeled his energy through the Eser Sefirot, through 10 divine forces. Okay, these Sefirot are like tools that God employs to interact with this world. So my friends, we discussed this. What are the 10 Sefirot? You can see it right here on the screen, as we discussed in previous, when did I put this up for you? On Monday. Right, there is Chachma, Bina, Dat, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, which are the first 3 cognitive elements with which God created the world. And then we have the 7, which are the emotional elements. And that is Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus. Chesed is loving kindness. Tiferet is severity. Severity is Gevura. Tiferet is compassion. That's beauty. Netzach is triumph, victory. Hod is humility, splendor. Yesod is foundation, but that's the connection in order to connect with people. And finally is Malchut, which is royalty. And we'll try to get into some of these ideas as well as we're discussing them here. And certainly this, Winston says, is the doctrine of perpetual creation. Yes, it's a basic concept of Hasidic philosophy of perpetual creation. Every moment God is creating the world. Now, for example, let's look at the first emotional one, because we discussed Chachma bin Adat, wisdom, knowledge, understanding is the idea that you have a thought, then you're going, that's the first part. Chachma Bina is the development of the thought, right? So you want to build a home, you have an idea of a home, that's Chachma. Bina is the blueprints, right? Making the plans. Dat is the building, the implementation of the home. Going through the 7 emotional attributes, we say the sphere of Chesed as an example, right? Kindness. It's the tool for God to indiscriminately give. Right? God gives us life. You woke up this morning, thank God. That's God's unwavering kindness and chesed that God gives us. In fact, there's a great story I heard from Rabbi Moshe Shiner. Rabbi Shiner is a rabbi in Palm Beach, Florida. And he takes a lot of groups to Israel. I think Palm Beach is probably one of the wealthiest Jewish communities in the world. I'm assuming, I hope they take good care of their rabbi. As far as I heard from this story that he told me. He said he was at the Kotel. And I could relate to this story a little bit because I used to be, before I moved back to South Africa, meaning I was here for a few years, 2002 to 2004. Then I went to America and I was studying for my bachelor's, and I was at Yeshiva University and Torah College. And I had a job on the weekends as a rabbi of a Jewish hotel for retired people in Atlantic Beach, New York, which is also a very affluent community on the water. And when I was going to Israel, all the residents gave me money. I think they gave me $500 or more to bring to Israel as charity, to give out at the Kotel to people. It was incredible that the people were all so generous. At first, I felt like, a millionaire. I was at the Kotel giving out dollar bills to people, and I was getting attacked from all sides. The schnorrers there are something special. So listen to the story that will put the schnorrers into perspective. Okay? So Rabbi Shiner says he was going to the Kotel, and this guy came to him with a story of why Rabbi Shiner should give him some charity. Okay? Rabbi Shiner listens to this story. He says, ordinarily I'd give the guy $1, but instead I gave him $40, $50 because this guy really had a good story to tell. The next day, Rabbi Shiner comes to the Kotel again. You're in Israel, you're in Jerusalem, you go to the Kotel every day to pray. And Rabbi Shiner is going to the Kotel to pray, and here's this guy again with his story. So Rabbi Shiner looks at him and says, I gave you yesterday already. The guy looks at Rabbi Shiner and says, you don't talk to me like that. Excuse me, why can't I talk to you like that? He says, you're coming to the Kotel now to pray to God, right? You want God to tell you, I gave you yesterday? I let you wake up yesterday, so no more today? You don't want to give me money, that's your business. But don't tell me I gave you yesterday. You don't want God to tell you he gave you yesterday. So he gave him another $1, he said. he said he deserved, for that lesson, he deserved another $1. Okay, that's what Rabbi Shiner told me. But the point I'm trying to say is that's chesed God gives us. And obviously gevura is the tool for God to restrain, judgment, to withhold and limit the divine benevolence. Unfortunately, God creates the world in this way, the combination of chesed and gevura. That's tiferes. And that's where you get the whole spectrum of these 10 sefirot, right? Each one is embedded in the others. 10 times 10. So what you got now is 100 combinations of each of these 10 sefirot. When in 6 weeks' time, when Pesach comes, 6 weeks from tomorrow is Bedikas Chametz. That's right, 6 weeks from this Saturday night, we're going to start counting the Sefirah. And when we count the Sefirah, every day we're going to count these Sefirot. Not just counting each day, but making each day count. And as you count through these, every day you're going to enumerate the Sefirah related to that day. And the creative energy that is channeled into the world and is balanced in a stable way from each of these Sefirot. We don't use the cognitive ones, we only talk about the 7 emotions. 7 times 7 is 49, 49 days of counting from Pesach to Shavuos, from the time God took us out of Egypt till the day we received the Torah at Mount Sinai. We prepare, how? By refining ourselves through each of these Sefirot. Each of these Sefirot is a whole combination. Maybe we'll get back to this after Pesach, and we could go through each Sefirah, maybe. If you guys want, every day we could take one of these Sefirot, and we could talk about how they could each one could refine us. And that energy, how it comes into our life and into the world around us, and I think that makes a tremendous, if you could apply that. Let me share with you something here that the Medrash says. The Medrash tells us a fascinating little insight. Let me read it to you. The Medrash says, the Melech shahayu lo kosot reikim, that this is analogous to a king who had empty glasses. And the king told himself, if I pour hot water in them, what's going to happen? They'll break. If I pour freezing water in them, what's going to happen? Also, they'll crack, right? So what did he do? He mixed hot water with frigid water and poured the blend into the glasses. The combination. Chesed alone is no good. Chesed is lovely to have loving kindness. But if you tell a kid, sure, do whatever you want, play with a knife, walk into oncoming traffic, is that kindness? Same thing. God has to give us a combination of the discipline and the kindness. So the Medrash says, God said, if I create the world only with the attribute of compassion alone, then what's going to happen? People will be unconcerned with the consequences of their actions if there's only kindness. What if the God is going to create only b'midas hadin, only with a judgment? Then what happens? The world will not survive the judgment of honest scrutiny, because what's going to happen is, imagine a parent is only disciplining. You can't have that. Therefore Hashem says, God said, I will create the world of the blend of each attribute. And that's how the world will endure. The synthesis, the combination of each of these. So between Pesach and Shavuos, what we're going to do is, we're going to learn the combination of each of these. There's a chesed of chesed, and then there's a disciplined chesed, and there's a beautiful chesed. Each one of these needs to be combined together. And the delicate balance of these competing forces is how the world operates, and that's what we call nature. That's the way God made it. But we have the unique power to shift that. That's why it says, Ein mazal Yisrael. We're not, as much as we believe that there's kochavim mazalot, there's constellations and there's stars, and if you're born to a particular horoscope, you are doomed for certain things. I'm a Gemini. Oh no, who knows what Gemini means for me? The truth is, I've seen that some of the ideas of Gemini are true. Whether they're true or not, maybe they're only true because I believe, because I read somewhere that a Gemini likes to speak, and a Gemini's twins, and a Gemini's combinations. Maybe I believed in it because I read it. Or maybe it is true. But the Gemara says, so you're not controlled by your constellation. You can change it. Don't tell yourself, oh no, I was born under that constellation, which means I'm doomed. No such thing. Maybe that's a stronger attribute of yours, but you could certainly affect it. The human soul is created b'tselem Elokim, in the divine image, which is why it reflects the divine form of these 10 Sefirot. When we project one of the faculties within our soul, we align ourselves and the whole world that we inhabit with that Sefirah. We invite that force to be channeled into this world. When we display kindness, we invite God to channel kindness into the world. That's what we do. That's what we achieve. So, somebody have a question? Can I ask everybody to keep themselves muted, please, so we don't have this distraction? Thank you so much. Okay? Just as the world that was created with these 10 attributes, we realize that the soul contains these very same 10 attributes. And this to us is when we display any of these in ourselves, we invite God to channel that energy into ourselves. When we're happy, we're inviting God to invest happiness into us and into the world. And the same is true in the reverse. What happens when we do things that are not, where we're doing the opposite? Let me share this with you. Says the Zohar, Tochazi. What does that mean? Come and observe. You ready to learn a little bit of Zohar, Kabbalah? Al matata kayama lekabla tadir. Our world is always ready to receive. Right? The spiritual flow that's emanating from above is constantly here, available for us. The upper world provides in accordance with the emotional state below in this world. If the state below is joyous, guess what? Correspondingly, an abundance flows from above. But if the state of the world is sadness, then correspondingly the flow of blessing is constricted. What's the war in Ukraine causing in the world right now? You understand? There are problems, and those problems are a reflection of the way we are. So we have to find that exact balance in our life. And that's why the verse says, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. How do you serve God? B'simcha, with joy. Chedva devarnash mashil kabei chedva arayilah. The Zohar says that mortal joy that we have in this world elicits a corresponding supernal joy above. We have the power to channel the forces of the spiritual worlds. And that trickles down to the way the world functions. You know what we call someone who believes in the spiritual power of positivity? An optimistic. Okay. Let us now think about how we can reshape our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Think about, for a moment, we talked about the thought faculty that we have. And the Baal Shem Tov taught that even just the focus of our minds can affect, we could bring these 10 Sefirot that we all created in the divine image with, and it could elicit a divine response. So think of it like the television channels. The different stations are all constantly broadcasting. You flick from channel to channel to channel on your TV remote, right? You could switch from one channel to the next. So you want to tune into the channel that's bombarding you with the negativity? You're going to be my guest, right? The TV channel, that station that you choose to watch, has an effect beyond just what's playing on your screen. It can shape your opinions, right? You hear their opinion, and if you are influenced by it, it can shape the way you see certain politics, or by the channel you make, right? Because that's your decision, which station to tune into. So when you switch channels, you're shifting the way your life will play out as well. You're shifting your influences, your thoughts. Our thoughts root us in a certain spiritual mental space, and switching on that spiritual channel is what's going to put us into the right direction. Where are you? Which thoughts? Right? Says the Baal Shem Tov, you are what you think. Let me quote it to you here. There's a verse in Tehillim, Habotach b'Hashem, Chesed Yisov Avenu. What does that mean, Ronnie?
You trust in Hashem, the kindness
will surround you. You trust in Hashem, the kindness will surround you. Says the Baal Shem Tov, Mi shehu lehefech miyasra tamid. That is, we can infer from this verse something constantly. One who's always anxious, always worried, always in a state of gevura. That's what's going to be their surrounding. That's going to be their environment. Right? So we become attached to that which we think about. If we contemplate matters that are gevuradik, that's what will draw into our life. Let's create that positivity. When our minds are focused on something negative, fear, panic, worry, that's what we're going to have. We want to avoid that. We have to tune into the right channel. Move the channel. Go to the positive channel. Shifting our awareness, meditate on something positive, and now we align ourselves with the divine flow of positivity, which leads to being treated with kindness, creating a positive environment around us. Yes, Bracha. It certainly does. You need a combination. You need a synthesis. Like I said, if you're only going to have positivity, you're going to have COVID all the time. You have to have a combination, a balance of chesed and gevura. Okay? And I think, by just have a positive thought in your mind at any moment, it doesn't mean you should be happy when you hear tragic news. For example, unfortunately, Yaakov, who used to sit right over here, just passed away. I have a funeral to officiate tomorrow. Jack Zlotnick, sat right over here. Yeah, he used to sit right here. Jack Zlotnick just passed away. I have to do right. This is not a moment of positivity. Yes, he lived a fulfilled and meaningful and purposeful life, but it's also you can't laugh in a time you're meant to cry. You're going to mess up your priorities. You have to know when's the right time. You have to also alter that mental space and know when is the right time for positivity, when's the time for negativity. There is a time for negativity, but not all the time. The modus operandi, your what would you call it? That mode is the right name. What's that? Your automated. I don't know what word I'm looking for here.
But you can even change that
Yeah.
which is negative, by sort of thinking a little deeper.
Sure, you got to think deeper. And this idea of trach gut but sein gut, as wonderful as it sounds, let me tell you, it didn't keep my mother alive when she was sick, even though I thought, think positively, my mother won't die. Okay? Or whatever other tragic moments right? So I'm not saying it's an absolute. It's talking about the attitude. It's talking about we're discussing what attitude we should have. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to not be realistic. We have to also be realistic. Okay, not always the things turn out the way we want. God's in control. But I think that it's important to realize that we certainly, at least in the situations where we can create positivity, that should be the mode that we want to be into. Correct? You understand what I mean? Okay. And that's something you can do at any moment of any day. And based on what we discussed, that's what we want to achieve. A way to bring the positive thoughts into your mind, even if the thought doesn't reflect the way you're feeling. That means even if right now I'm not in a good mood, I could try to reshape the way I feel. And again, if things are not the way they should be, the positive thoughts aren't necessarily going to change the reality. Okay? It could reshape how you feel. It can elicit a positive response in the universe around you, but there are times when gevura is necessary, and that's important for me to emphasize. Okay? Obviously, there's always what to be grateful for. Right? If you can't pay your bills, you can be thankful that that you're not one of the creditors. Okay? And that's why I want to conclude today's shiur with a daily ritual that we do, that we start our day with blessings. We start with modani, giving gratitude to Hashem. We don't just take the blessings in our lives for granted. Okay? Acknowledging and thanking God for the good that we have in life. These daily blessings have immense practical value as a positive meditative exercise to bring a simple awareness of gratitude in our minds. Think about somebody who put you in the right direction in life. Do you owe somebody a phone call to thank them for something? Okay, somebody who invested in you, somebody who believed in you. You know, there's this famous story I read once about, I don't know who the person is, excuse my ignorance, I don't know all the famous people out there, but I won't have the right name to tell you. But there was a kid. And this kid used to sit in class and twiddle with his fingers, dun, 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 and his teachers used to get annoyed with him. One day a teacher said, I want you to stay behind after class. And he thought to himself, my goodness gracious, I'm in trouble again. What happened? The teacher said, wasn't in trouble. This teacher said, you obviously like movement. And I thought about what I could give you to channel your movement in the right direction. And gave him 2 drumsticks. Said, you obviously have a talent for drumming. That's what this kid did. And he became a famous drummer, and today he's a world-renowned entertainer. Okay, and that's something that we have to keep in mind. So think about the blessings. Starting your day with these blessings, it has the psychological benefit of inducing a positive emotional stance. It has the spiritual benefit of aligning ourselves with God's graciousness, and of course, that invites more positive results into our lives. Any questions? Let me share with you another meditation now. All ready?
No matter what yesterday was all about, tomorrow is a fresh day. You're going to begin painting on a new canvas, creating a very different picture, again one of your choice. We do that spiritually every day when we say in the morning the affirmation Modeh Ani. And what characterizes a new day is to begin initially with gratitude, because from a posture of gratitude, you can paint a beautiful picture of the coming day. Gently close your eyes. Allow your shoulders to slump a little, feeling warm and heavy. Warm and heavy. Feeling your arms, your legs, warm and heavy, inducing the relaxation response, feeling calm, peaceful, and serene. You have much to be thankful for, and each morning express gratitude, because the gratitude that you express is able to begin the painting of a new canvas, a new creation, a new picture of the day. Modeh Ani. I thank you, Hashem, for bringing back to me this morning a freshness of soul, consciousness, and awareness. Modeh Ani. I thank you, Hashem, for providing me with the freedom to express myself today, truly. Modeh Ani. I thank you, Hashem, for allowing me to be distinctive, original, unique, so that my soul can make its unique contribution to the world. Modeh Ani. I thank you, Hashem, for changing the world every day in front of my eyes, giving me the scope to be able to play my individual role in the whole process that leads to a destiny that I am part of. Hashem, I feel indebted. I feel gratitude. Thank you, Hashem. Today will be a new day.
I'm going to wish you a good Rosh Chodesh tonight. Now let's just conclude as follows. I just feel it's important that we do so. Right? We spent today, the last few days, studying the spiritual technology that gives rise to a very practical technique to enhance our lives. And by implementing this simple, but I think a very effective tool, we could live more calmly, we could be more in control of our feelings, we can manufacture positivity. But theory alone does not help. It takes disciplined practice, and this is what I want to conclude today's shiur with. I want you to bear with me and look on the screen for some takeaway ideas. Number one, I want you to be aware of your thoughts, okay? Be aware of your thoughts. Practice being aware of and actively controlling your thoughts. At any given moment in the day, pause and bring your attention to your thoughts. You could do this when you feel something unwanted coming to your mind, or even if there is nothing. Just take a moment and focus. Gently shift your thinking deliberately deliberately to thinking something positive that you want to think about. And the more you practice being conscious of your thoughts and thinking deliberately, the more habitual it will become, and the better you will be a master over your thoughts. That's number one. Number two, invest your mind in wholesome things. Spend a few quality moments every day reading, studying, thinking a Torah idea. Our mind generally wanders unconsciously towards things that we are involved in. That's the way it is. And by making a habit, as we discussed, to have something positive that you learn, that you read, that you talk about, there's a good chance that even when your mind wanders, you will have something positive in your mind. Number three, my friends. Number three, where did it go? Set a daily time for positive meditation. Dedicate a few minutes every day. Like we said in the morning, you could go to, before you go to shul, whenever it is, spend some time saying positive ideas, thinking, and particularly by saying the morning brachas, you will put yourself in the positive mind space. Let's conclude with the key points. Okay. That's it, my friends. That's it. No key points today. Sorry. All right, ladies and gents, wish you all a pleasant day. Thanks for joining. See you again, please God, tomorrow. Not tomorrow, Monday.